So let's dive in. Jarace Walker went 3 of 4 from the field. I think he had like 8 points in the game against Alabama over the weekend. Houston got up big, like 15 points in the second half in that game, and then Alabama came back behind. An awesome coaching performance more than anything, I thought, from Nate Oates. An awesome lead guard performance from Jaden Bradley to beat Houston on its home court. Fascinating game for a number of reasons, but we wanted to talk about Jarace Walker, who I'll start here just to give a little bit of time context on where I was on Jarace. I've always liked Jarace. I haven't always loved him. I've always thought that the offensive skill level gets a little bit overrated, personally. I don't totally know what he does at an NBA level in terms of skill offensively right now, while also just absolutely fucking adoring all of the motor, the aggressiveness, the energy, the fact that he's a 6'8" powerhouse with a 7'2" wingspan that, like, I think has some potential to play like small ball center in the NBA at some point if it really breaks right. Where were you on Jarace coming into the year? Let's start with that conversation.
Yeah, I had him like top 7 coming into the year. I was really excited about Jarace, and I think what's been interesting in this year is like you're mentioning a little bit. Um, I think what is hard with a guy like Jarace is trying not to bake in what could be and envisioning what he could be instead of like noting, okay, like there are real limitations here. And I think that that's something I've really had to focus in on more this year because like just to add like added context, like when I really first started scouting hard um like the Cade draft.
Yeah.
I went back and I watched IMG versus Montverde. So it's after Cade's gone. So that's like the Caleb Houston, Jalen Duren team at Montverde. Tariq's there. Like that. I mean, that's one of the most loaded prospect games I've watched in the last couple of years. And I watched Jarace for the first time as a junior. And I like looked and I'm like, is this like an RSCI industry plant? And like then I saw him his next year. Like, I mean, like, to be fair, like you got the idea watching him, like, okay, this kid's 16 and he's 6'8", 250 and looks like he could be starting at defensive end for the Chicago Bears. Like, this is insane. And but like you saw the ideas, like, okay, you can handle a little bit, like he's really physical, but like what does this mean? Like he can't really shoot. I don't believe in his touch. Like I don't know what's going on here. And then I watched him last year at IMG, and that jump up in skill was like insane. Like the feel improved. Like there were real playmaking flashes, and not just flashes, like consistent. Like he would handle large parts of IMG's offense. Like the defense became like you mentioned, like the real ability to play as a small ball 5, to be a really impactful rim protector, switchable. And I think the shot was still a real work in progress, but like it really showed real signs last year of improving. What's been so weird this year, and I know this is a big thought, but like wrangling it all together, and what made it so interesting about him going to Houston is like, okay, you had this guy who his whole prospectum is like coming up in, I am a wing figuring out, or wing forward big, figuring out what the hell I am by doing all these things. And he goes to Houston, a team that is by and large just about the best team in the country. Obviously, they lost this game, but I think they're still right up about there. And it's like, okay, well, your role is going to be a lot smaller than what that was. And it's like, I think in some ways, not that I have an answer for this, I always wonder, it's like, okay, well, if he goes the Juju Jackson route, what does that look like for him to start the year instead of, getting into a reduced role? But then again, like we're talking about, like, he has not looked good in the reduced role offensively. I think that there are some things that looked a little bit better in the Alabama game, but that's more so speaking on how rough it was to start the year. Like he is second guessing a lot. He's checking himself out of a lot of things. And then offensively, like the physicality has not been there, which has been weird to watch. Like he's taking these floaters all the time. And to be fair, like he has touch on floaters, but he's 6'8", 250. Like you got to go up with stuff. Like there was a play in the Alabama game where he's on far side of the floor. I mean, close side of the floor towards the camera during the second half. Gets the ball probably like 5 feet in from the corner, takes a step up, And instead of like, he could have dunked it, like straight up just could have dunked it, and throws cross court pass to, I believe it was Rylan Griffin in the corner. And it's like, good. I get the idea.
For
like,
people who don't know, Rylan Griffin plays for Alabama.
Oh, no, not Rylan Griffin. My bad. I'm losing my mind. I think it was probably Shed or Sasser, but point being, like, makes a really good pass, and I get the why, but it's also the, I need you to like take the shot at the rim. Like, so it's been a lot of stuff process wise where it feels like he doesn't have, his feel right now has been rough offensively.
Well, and then there was that moment that, kind of talks about what you're saying, where he set a screen on the empty side of the court, far side from the camera. And I believe it was Sasser hit him with a little pocket pass, and he takes a dribble, cocks it back, and tries to throw down on literally the entire team and gets fouled and goes to the foul line. I'd like to see him do that more.
Yeah.
Just like be that guy.
I think that's what's hard too, because like a lot of his role at Houston has just been, okay, spot up in the corner and cut baseline when you have opportunities. There haven't been like tons of role opportunities for him. That's what I thought felt a little bit better in this game. He got more opportunities to screen and roll a little bit. And like that play was the exact idea. It's like, okay, he doesn't have to think. It's one dribble and go. Like, I believe in him to be able to do that, because the issue right now is like a lot of his catch and go stuff. Like, he's gotten called for a ton of travels this year because of he hesitates for a sec. And like, if you can remove that hesitation, I think that's where you can really see some of the good things happening, because there were other opportunities. Like, he was doing some stuff as a DHO guy, or not even DHO. Well, yeah, I think it was DHO stuff, and like, or even just like ghost screening. And he had like a DHO take, I believe in the first half, ends up being like just a drop off pass to the dunker spot. And like, that's perfect. Like, that's the stuff I want to see. Like, obviously, yes, you need to see him be aggressive in taking those shots at the rim and just being around the rim. Cause this is a guy, like, his free throw rate should be astronomical. Like,
should be.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and it's not right now. So I think that we saw good glimpses in the Alabama game, but also it's been telling of just kind of how rough his acclimation has been to get him ready at the college game.
Trivia time, Mark Schindler.
Oh boy.
How many possessions per synergy do you think Jarace Walker has had as a roll man this year in pick and roll?
Less than 10.
The number is 3.
Yep.
How many do you think he's scored on?
None of them.
3.
Oh.
Scored on all of them. He is a legit guy that can do this. Like, I'd love to see them just run ball screen actions for him. Here's the other thing they did super well in that game. They didn't utilize him with it, but they utilized Jawan Roberts with it more so.
Love Jawan.
They used, Jawan Roberts as a DHO guy, and because they knew Noah Clowney was being super aggressive, hard hedging in the middle of the court, they would use Roberts as a denial DHO guy, and then he'd just turn and get a wide open lane to the basket. He had one dunk that way and one finish that way, where they were super smart and just like schemed ways to get a guy open. I think Jarace can do that stuff. Definitely. For sure. It worked with Jawan Roberts, right? So like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it on some level. But like, I think they have the versatility with both of those guys to be able to do it with both of those guys is more my point. And just like for background here, Jarace Walker so far is averaging 9.4 points, 6.7 rebounds, 1.5 assists, 1.1 steals, 1.1 blocks per game, shooting 47.6% from the field, 37.5% from 3. Now, all of this comes back to the fact that like he has skill for being a guy that's 6'8", 240 pounds. I don't know if he has NBA skill right now. You know what I mean? Like, it feels a lot like, to me, it's a different player and a different type. But like when Jaden McDaniels was coming up out of Seattle, I always thought Jaden McDaniels looked like a great ball handler for someone who is 6'9", 6'10", but not actually a guy that could handle the ball in the NBA right now. Because guys will just come down, they'll dig on your handle, they'll cause you all sorts of problems. I didn't think he could create shots in the NBA. And if you looked, he's been a very effective player in the NBA, but he hasn't done it by creating shots. right? He's done it by being a good corner shooter and being a super high level defender. When I watched Jarace, I thought it was more that in terms of skill level. He's nowhere near the shot creator that Jaden was, but I think he's a better passer. And, he could get into the lane as like a, spotting up in the wing, pump fake, attack, close out, go. Or short roll off of a ball screen, catches, dribble once, Euro steps, tries to finish. And you mentioned the idea of him settling for the floater a lot. He's just trying to get to that Euro step floater all the time, it feels like. Like it feels like that's the thing he feels most comfortable doing. Like he has taken, it looks like 13 floaters this year. So he's taking more than one of those per game. And he's taken 47 shots at the rim, which like almost feels like not enough, right? Like for what he's capable of, I feel like he's a real potential finisher. And like, I guess that part of it is scheme and part of it is like, so like here's what I'll hit the ball back to you as if we're like playing tennis right now. Do you think that there is a good team in the country that he could initiate offense for right now? Because I'm actually like not totally sure. Like we can talk a lot about the fact that they have Jamal Shed and Marcus Sasser and all these guys that are going to get most of the opportunities for Houston, right? But like, let's put him on. I'm trying to think of a team, right? Like off the top of my head, that's like pretty decent that maybe could use like a 4-man initiator, right? Like put him on, say Gonzaga, right? Where their guards are struggling, right? And you could play him next to Timmy and theoretically like he and Timmy could work reasonably well together if he can shoot. Do you think that like that would be an effective source of offense right now for a college team to do that if he was in a different situation?
No, probably not.
Yeah.
I think because like you mentioned too, like he's really struggled seeing guys coming outside of his vision, which like that sounds like duh, like okay, of course he is, but like he just hasn't really had a good feel for help coming, which has led to it feels like at least half his turnovers have been off that when he'll drive in and then a nail help comes, it's like, oh, there's no help here. He doesn't really seem to be sensing that coming. And I think like part of it too is like, again, like, okay, well, if he's somebody who like I would love to see get face-up opportunities in a cleared out side of the floor. And
yeah,
like we saw with Jalen Duren at times with Memphis, like I think that's a segmented way to get him to pick apart things with his passing or get a one-on-one opportunity. And again, like not saying that it's effective offense, but it is.
Do you know
like,
the team that actually does that well? Dayton did it really well last year with Theron Holmes.
Yeah.
Like, I think that is like, if I was them, I'd be looking at that offense as much as anything. Don't look at Dayton's offense this year.
Yeah.
It's a fucking train.
It is bad.
But last year, I think they did some really interesting things with Theron Holmes. So like, that's another example. You can find ways to do this, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think I still, what's made like I don't know. I never viewed him as like I think this guy's going to be like some super high level initiator, but I think the idea is more like as he does continue progressing, like I think the idea for him is more like becoming that 4-5, like that combo big who can do just a little bit of everything while being, starting to hone out like a standout skill. Like and to me, as much as the offense has been a struggle, what has been really awesome is that I think the defense has really popped for me. Like, we didn't talk about it. Like the defense in the Alabama game was legitimately awesome. Like
really,
he
good.
had
really
like
good.
He's special in the fact that like he's been one of the best low men in the country. Like the way that like there are guys who will like they'll put a foot in the lane as a tag. Like no, he 2-hand tags every single roller every single time. And he had that one, I mean, it's been clipped a million times by now on Dally, but like second half, or no, it's first half, and he does his tag. I don't remember who he tags on to. It probably was on Noah Clowney, and Javon Quinterly goes to throw a pass cross court into the skip it to the slot after, he's helped, and makes just full on recovery to the slot, steals the ball, and gets fouled on the other end gets free throws. And like that kind of thing that's a routine play for him. Like he had stuff where I felt like there were moments, especially like in the Oregon game earlier this year, I felt like he was pretty wary to be helping. Like he seemed like a little bit frozen in mud. This game, like he teetered on over helping at times, but to like the level where it was like he was just making shit happen. Like he had a block coming from behind on, I can't remember who it was off the top of my head, but like point being, like he was defending in the slot and was, like saw this drive happen. He was like, I think this guy's going for the shot, comes down, gets the block from behind. Like that's the kind of stuff I view with him. Like, and I mean, it was like we talked about with Jaron earlier in terms of trying to scheme guys out. It felt like Alabama was doing everything they could to get him away, like as the game wore on. Like, not to this again, like not to the same level, but like I think like Houston was really switching everything. They're like, okay, we need to get you off of our ball handlers, and then he's still in the slot and being impactful. And I've really enjoyed his defense.
I think he's awesome on defense. I think he's awesome on defense in terms of awareness, in terms of always being in the right position, in terms of help defense. What do you think of his on-ball defense?
I think he is the difficult product of somebody who is, again, not same player, but it's like kind of like watching Jaden Ivey play defense, but at 6'8". Like his steps aren't always perfect. But he's so athletic that he can make up for it a lot of the time. And I think there will be growing pains with that at the next level for sure. But I think like the way that he's just improved technique wise off the ball and as a rim protector makes me feel like he's going to be able to make that happen. I think ideally he's much more of a switch guy, like who you're not asking to stay in front like for forever, but I think he's good enough at moving his feet and using his length to be able to really attack somebody at the top of like if you're running a zone, he can do that. Or even if like again, if he's just switched out onto somebody, like I think that's going to be really difficult for teams to guard. But again, like not somebody that I think you should be like, okay, well, go guard that guy and be on an island. Like I think that's asking for problems, or not.
Mark is gone. I don't know where Mark went. He'll be back at some point, I think. Here he is again.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. I have no idea what I just hit, but it exited. That's my bad. But yeah, point being, like that's not going to be a strong suit to do that right now. But I do think
so. So here would be my next question to you. Where do you think the shot is? That's ultimately like the swing skill here is his jumper.
Maybe I'm too biased, but I think the shot has really improved from where it used to be. I still think in terms of actual efficacy at the next level, it needs to improve release. Like I think his release needs to be a little bit higher. I think that it needs to be quicker. But from the corners, I feel really confident in what that looks like already. Like he doesn't hesitate on the corner shots at least. I think the above the break stuff really needs work. I don't know if he's ever going to be somebody who's really shooting off any kind of movement. But even just being like somebody who can be a stationary guy in the slots, I think that's coming in time. And anybody I've talked to at IMG or Houston has only spoken, and anybody's going to say this, but like, and I think it's played out, like just his work ethic is apparently pretty damn good. So I feel good about the shot growing and getting better. But again, like I think it's more so like it's getting to a level of being respectable rather than being good, like maybe like a 36% shooter on like 4 a game or something like that. So it's not perfect, but I do think that it's going to get there in time.
Yep. Okay. What is the role that makes sense? I guess is my question. Like, let's say it all goes right. Let's say that like everything developmentally for him breaks the way we want it to. What is the role?
That's a great question. I think what makes him fascinating is I feel like he is very much like he has to be with the right team. Like he's actually, easy enough to say. I feel like you can say it about anybody, but he's the guy I wish if I could do anything to get him in Miami. Like I think that like a coaching staff that has like a very direct plan of how to get him involved, and get him reps that are meaningful. Because again, like you're just force feeding him creator reps makes no sense. Like that's not how I view him. But like, okay, can we really focus on working him in as a DHO threat, working him in as a short roll guy? Because those are the ways where I'm like, I think that if you end up getting him to be somebody who's a creator, you start there. Like, I think like you start with segmented decision making, like, okay, these are the things that we're going to ask you to do and improve on. And those are things that I think that he already has to a degree, and I think could really pop at the next level. But again, like, okay, like let's say like if he were in Dallas right now, he would be a fish out of water playing for Dallas. I think. Like, I think that he would really struggle with that. I think he would really struggle being in a place where it's just like stand and, you'll get the ball at some point. You just take shots and attack closeouts, and that's really it. So I think, it has to be a team that's like really bought into who he can be. But I think, like, again, just to speak on ultimate role, like, he's in that hard spot of being a basketball player who's like potentially really good at some things. But I think, again, like, I tend to just lean back on, I think the defense is going to be so good that he gets a lot of opportunities to really figure things out. But the first team is the most important for that happening. So the role is like, ideally, I think he's somebody who plays with like alongside a stretch five. Like, I think that would be best for him. Like, to really get the most out of what he can do as a screener and roller, and getting those opportunities. I think, playing alongside somebody who's more of a pop threat at the five would be good for him.
So like here'd be like the ideal, right? Like, say the Pacers end up at 14th overall or something like that because they just barely miss out on the playoffs, and they decide to re-sign Miles Turner, right? Putting Jarace in an offense that can be a bit motion heavy with Ben Mathurin, with Tyrese Halliburton, Chris Duarte, Andrew Nemhard, having the spacing of Miles Turner. That's kind of the, like, putting him at the 4 is their long-term 4, playing that role that they're having Jalen Smith play a lot of the time right now. That's kind of the idealized, like, I'm trying to put it in terms for people that like is a little bit more concrete, I guess. Like that's almost exactly what you're talking about. It sounds like, right?
I think what's tough is I think it almost has to be better than that. Because just Miles is like, he's still not really getting guarded as a 3-point threat, even though he's shooting like 42% from deep this year. So it makes it like, I'm not trying to be like nitpicky and annoying, but I wonder
I think that's an important point. Like,
because then I'm thinking,
Miles Turner isn't a good enough shooter for this to work, it's hard to find that guy then at the 5 for it to like really be idealized with Jarace.
Yeah. Because I think like what does help though is I feel like, especially with what that offense has been this year, by virtue of like how much they play like transition in the half court, I think they really mitigate a lot of those issues. And I feel good because like they've really tried to get some of the short roll stuff out of Isaiah Jackson this year, and it has not been there. So I do think that I'd have a lot more confidence in it popping for Jarace than I have had for Isaiah Jackson.
I agree.
I think that could look good. So I think, like, again, like, it would be, okay, you're doing this with the idea of in 2 years, we get to the point where we're not really too worried about what the spacing is in the half court. But that's with like, okay, Jarace's shot comes along, you still have Miles Turner there. But again, like, I still just think like I view him so much as like being that guy who could make it work. It's so it's a trap because it's like that's unfair way to put it about a guy, but just in terms of the skill set, it's almost like it feels like a trap because it's like the idea of like, oh well, you can get so much out of this, but really there's so much that has to go on to make it work in an idealized setting too.
Is it maybe putting him between Michael Porter Jr. and Nikola Jokic in Denver and playing the Aaron Gordon role and just trying to wreak havoc everywhere kind of thing?
Yeah, I think that could be really fun for him. I would love to see that.
But here's what I would say about that, though. So he'd be able to operate as a cutter, but with Jokic, you then lose a lot of the short roll stuff because they wouldn't end up doing that with him. So this is kind of why I'm a little bit lower on Jarace. I say all of this to say, like, this is why I have some concerns with him and have him more in like the 20-ish range as opposed to like, I've seen some people that are like, this guy's a lottery pick. This guy's like, potential top 10 guy. I just can't get there because it's hard for me with the role because I don't see him ever as a volume 3-point shooter. I see him maybe getting to the point where he can like hit a spot 3, but like I don't I don't like the shot enough to where I project that necessarily.
Yeah. No, I think that's totally fair. And I think to just to credit too, like I think I mean just based on our speaking, like I was higher on him headed into the year. He's definitely dropped for me. Like he would still be in the lottery, but I'm talking like 10 to 14. Like I would not have him in the top 10 right now based on what this has
Yeah.
looked like. I still believe a lot in what his trajectory can be, and I do have a good feeling about how the rest of this year could handle out for him. But I totally agree. I think that it's really made me rethink about what his offense is. Because, like, again, just like based on what the trajectory felt like the last 2 years, it really felt like this year would be like, oh, yeah, like it's going to pop. Like he's going to go play for a potential national champion. And it's been a little bit more tough sledding. But what does make it interesting, too, like, again, not the same player, but I think we had some of the same discussions about Jalen Duren at the beginning of last year. Like it felt like it took him a little bit of time to really ease into things. The defense, not in the same way. Like at least for me, I felt like before they really started to lean into him more as being a guy who can operate as a post playmaker and doing some of those things, it felt like again not to the same degree, but I do think like in terms of thinking like okay, this could look a little bit different in a month.
So here's what I would say to that. Jalen Duren is making an impact in the NBA right now, largely by being 6'11" with a 7'6" wingspan, right? Yeah. Like he is rebounding the hell out of the ball. He's being a good rim protector. He's finishing reasonably well around the basket. Like he's just doing the big man things, right? Which is super valuable. And he's brought some switchability defensively, and he's been pretty effective as a rookie defender so far, especially for someone who is like 19 years old, right? I don't mean to like, shit on what Jalen Duren has done this year. I just say it to say that like Jarace doesn't have the 6'11", 7'6" wingspan to fall back on. He's 6'8" with a 7'2" wingspan. So if he's that, like if he's more of like a dirty work guy in the way Jalen Duren has been so far, I worry, can he be as effective at it as like a Jalen Duren is in the NBA? And yeah, I know that like you're saying something different than what I'm saying, but yeah. I'm like trying to like put it in NBA terms in terms of like the way that it's borne out for Jalen on the court.
Yeah, no, those are totally fair points. Yeah, and I think it's obviously it's different for sure, but no, exactly. Like if Jarace is getting to the point where he's like pretty strict small ball 5, then I think it makes it a lot harder, without a doubt. Especially just thinking about like who some of the other guys in this draft are. I'm right there with you.
So let's play my favorite game just to like fuck with Mark Schindler right now.
Oh boy,
this guy or that guy.
All right, let's do it.
Okay. Jarace Walker or GG Jackson?
Jarace, for sure.
Just because of the defense, right?
Yeah, I have a lot more confidence in him just having like a concrete skill that's going to keep him on an NBA court right now.
So who do you think is further ahead, Jarace Walker or GG Jackson offensively?
Neither. I
think GG is like substantially further ahead, to be honest.
I probably can't get there yet. I just like the overall passing feel is just like I know that the shot making chops are really interesting. Yeah. It's a tough archetype for me. I want to see a lot more, and it's all again like you have to bring up like, well, GG should be a senior in high school right now, so I do think it's close, but I would probably
GG is more than 2 years younger than Jarace.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I don't know. Like I would take GG. I would take the flyer on GG and see if the defense translates. But you're in that range, it sounds like, with Jarace, right?
Definitely.
Okay. So Keontae George or Jarace Walker?
Keontae.
Okay. Jarace Walker or Jet Howard?
Jet Howard.
Sweet boy.
Jet Howard. Dude, okay. I need to riff real quick. What Jet Howard has started to show like the last week, like I don't want to get like overly hyped just because of a game against Minnesota in December, but like the things he's starting to show comfortably on ball is like even with the defensive concerns that we've talked about, like that's talking like close to top 10 for me. Like that is like, to me, like I would have him over Jarace right now.
So I have Jet at 13 right now for what it's
Yeah.
worth. So I'm not far off on you with that.
Yeah.
Jarace Walker or Cason Wallace?
That's I think it would be team dependent, but I probably have Cason right now.
Okay. Bryce Sensabaugh or Jarace Walker?
Jarace Walker.
Agree. Chris Murray or Jarace Walker?
Jarace Walker.
Agree. Grady Dick or Jarace Walker?
Same thing as Cason. I think it's team sensitive, but I'd probably have Grady over him right now.
Okay. I would actually go Jarace in that one, I think.
Okay.
My really fun one. Donovan Clingan or Jarace Walker?
It's Jarace Walker. I'm taking Jarace Walker.
Too.
Yeah.
I would too. But I love
shout out to Donovan Clingan. He's been like, talk about impact freshman, man. Like he's a large reason for why UConn's a national title worthy team this year. Like he's been incredible off the bench for them.
Okay. So this is going to be the fun moment where we transition now. Brandon Miller or Jarace Walker?
Probably. Well, it would be Brandon. Because I'll let you transition, but yeah, it would be Brandon.
So Brandon Miller played in this game. Brandon Miller went 0 for 8. He had 8 points on 8 of 9 from the field, or from the free throw line. I'm sorry. I thought he made a bigger impact in this game than Jarace did, because the way that Alabama utilized him as a screener and as an off-ball movement guy, I think showcased everything about why he is such a threatening player, and why having a guy that is 6'9", not 6'5" or 6'6", that can shoot like he can and shoot off of movement like he can is such a dangerous threat. Like they were just running screen action after screen action in the second half, involving Brandon Miller and involving the gravity that he has going away from the ball in order to open everything up for everything else that they were doing. Mm-hmm. It was really, really important and really, really impressive that he was out there, even if he wasn't the one affecting the box score in that game. And frankly, like I didn't think he played all that well in that game, but I thought his impact on winning was greater than like an 8 rebound or an 8-point 0 for 8 game that you would see typically.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I don't know if I would say it's like substantially better than Jarace, just because again the Jarace defense was so freaking good. But
I mean, if I said substantially, I'm sorry.
No, you didn't say substantially. I was just processing that in my head. Yeah, I think I just want to riff on this really quick. I have been incredibly fucking annoyed by the way people have talked about Brandon Miller this year.
Oh, okay. Let's go. Give it to me.
I get the concerns about him as a 2-point shooter and finisher inside the arc. Those are very fair and relevant. If you have those concerns, and you have had them since the beginning, as I think most people have, awesome. But I think like the way that it continually gets broadcast is like this major, like, oh, well, you were an idiot for having him here. Like, get over yourself, man. Like, I really struggle with, I tweeted a thread about this. I just really struggle with the way that people talk about prospects in general, like on Twitter, on podcasts. Like, yes, there are flaws, and I think it's important to talk about them. It's not that we're not supposed to be critical and analysis, but also like, dude, what are we doing here? If you're going online and like having this entire tirade of tweets because somebody had Brandon Miller in their top 10 and you think that's stupid, like just it's a little bit ridiculous to me. And I think, again, like you're mentioning too, it just, yes, this is how I want to go about it. Like the 2-point scoring is a legitimate problem. Like the scoring on drives is a legitimate problem. His footwork in the paint, a legitimate problem. But let's look at it like this. Okay. What he has shown this year has been like legit shooting from outside, legit shooting off movement, legit pull-up creation and stuff from deep. And I think, yes, we need to see it in a larger sample size to see it translate. But again, he's 6'9" doing this. the handle has been, well, it is really wide and loose at times. Like, he's 6'9", he can snake dribble into the paint and get into areas and maneuver inside. And like, no, he's not a 3-level scorer right now, but he has shown a little bit of passing at his size while being a legitimate movement shooter. And that's really damn good. And that's without being a complete defensive negative too. So I maybe part of that is just like, I tend to be really glass half full because I hated how I was talked about when I was an athlete. But like, I also just think, again, like, sometimes I really just hate the way that flaws get overly nitpicked to a way where, yes, it's true that they matter, but also like, okay, what if we talk about why they matter because of what their game really is instead of just being like that? So sorry for the giant rant, Sam, but like, it has really frustrated me recently. So
look, I rely on you for these things to know the temperature and the barometer of what the internet thinks about people, because I don't look for many
you're
of
smarter
the
than me.
reasons
Yeah.
that you're talking about, and because, like, frankly, I am someone where I feel like I like to go in where my thought processes and like evaluations are kind of unimpeded, and like I don't have some sort of preconceived notion beyond what I've seen and beyond, like, just like a recruiting ranking, right?
Sure.
Like I like to have, I use recruiting rankings as a watch list because it's easiest, right? And NBA teams do this. Like, it's not, nobody ranks based off of recruiting rankings. It's more just like, this is what we need. This is who we need to see. This is what we need to see. Right. I think that people underestimate how hard it is to find guys that are 6'9" movement shooters. They're like, you can run off of screening actions at 19, 20 years old. I don't know if Brandon's turned 20 yet, but he's very close. If he hasn't, that you can run off of real actions and that they can fire and shoot. It's very hard to find that. It's even harder to find those guys that can defend and like defend in space a little bit, because Brandon's not like a super, like, he's not Jarace Walker defensively. He's not anywhere near that in terms of like making an impact all over the court, but he's switchable and he can deal with a lot of different mismatches and a lot of different matchup kind of situations, right? That alone, like, I hate to be reductive about stuff, and look, like, I have to write a fucking 125,000 word draft guide at some point. Like, I will be writing critical things about Brandon Miller at some point, right? Because that's part of it. Now, I like to think that I write about things in a way that shows that there is potential for improvement. I think, frankly, I've gotten a lot better at that over the last couple of years, particularly. I think as I came up and when I was younger, I think I was kind of a dickhead, but like, I think it's part of the growing and maturing process with this stuff and wanting to see guys succeed. Like, I come to all of this with like, unless I hear that you are like a terrible human being off the court, and I don't really like to report that stuff, I'm going to root for you to succeed at the end of the day. Like, I just want those guys to be successful, point blank. I want prospects to have the most success possible. I don't give a fuck if my rankings are wrong. Like, I just had some dude like that's a Raptors like YouTuber go live because of our Scotty Barnes conversation, where he was like, oh yeah, you had Scotty Barnes at 6 on your board instead of 4, and you like Jalen Suggs more, so now you're like stuck in your opinion. I like was so publicly strong about Scotty Barnes last year, like after he played well, because I don't care if I'm wrong. Like, I care if I'm wrong just from like an evaluation perspective, but like, I'm not too big to admit when I'm wrong. You know what I mean? Like, it's cool. It's whatever. Right. In the case of Brandon, based off of what you're saying, I just hope that like people don't like lock in, I guess, on stuff. Like, I think it's kind of silly to like do that. These kids are fucking 19 years old in a lot of cases. Sometimes they're 17, like in Gigi Jackson's case. That's so young. There's still so much time for these guys to improve. And in Brandon's case, I think what he has to improve is fixable. like sometimes guys just don't have touch, right? And I think that touch is like this inherent thing that is you kind of have it or you don't. It's hard to fix that in a lot of ways. Brandon, a lot of it is just like footwork based, and like some of the shit he does from like a mechanics perspective more so than a physical perspective or a touch perspective. And he's already really good. Like, I think that there is some processing stuff I'd like to see improve. I think that there is some other stuff that like maybe he doesn't ever get to like a super high level point. But if you're 6'9" and you can shoot and you're not a liability defensively because you can take on a lot of different assignments and like be switchable, it's hard to get that guy outside of the lottery. Every NBA team is looking for guys like this. These are some of the most valuable archetypes in the NBA. Like I have as many, like I have Brandon in the like 10 to 14 range right now, or like the 9 to 14 range, not the top 7 that some people have him. I really like Brandon and I think he's terrific, but I have like concerns about what the upside is. But even if he doesn't ever figure out the on-ball stuff, he's still a good movement shooter that is 6'9" and is not going to be like a liability defensively. And that's helpful. It's just helpful to an NBA team now.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think that's a great point. Like one of the things that I always think about too, just like you mentioned in terms of movement shooting, think about how many teams in the NBA could use Doug McDermott. Like the answer is every team. And Brandon, I don't know if he's going to get to that level of shooter, but like same idea. Well, not being somebody you have to worry, in theory, about getting played off the court in playoffs. Like that's incredibly important in like every facets of really like just building out an offense. And then you talk about like, okay, what he can potentially bring if he can really develop out some more of his ability to see passes. And like he's already started to show some stuff with making some of the basic pick and roll reads. And like when you have that kind of shooting gravity and you can just make the basic pick and roll reads, like playing alongside a decent screener or roller, like then you're cooking with grease. So like, yeah, exactly. I'm right there with you. Like he's an incredibly fun prospect. And I think a lot of it too, like you mentioned the footwork, but I think even like just finishing through contact, part of that is the footwork for sure, but also like just getting stronger. He is like every bit of like 190 at best right now, it feels like.
Right.
So I feel like, yeah, again, just like getting stronger throughout his core, just adding a little bit of weight and finding new ways to, like, because he's pretty contact averse right now too. So like finding ways to not throw up, falling away stuff, like that's going to be really big for him. But again, like that's stuff that takes guys until they're like 24, 25 to figure out sometimes. So he's got a good base and it's just kind of building up from there.